So the next speaker of this session will be James Tucker. James has a career in cybersecurity spanning over 17 years, holding key positions at companies such as Sourcefire, Palo Alto, and Baffin Bay Networks. He is now at Zscaler, where he serves as the head of the international CISO team. So please join me in welcoming James to the stage.
All right. So after sitting feeling like a dog trying to understand calculus for the past 2 sessions, I'm glad there was like soldering irons and all that stuff involved. I feel like we're going to take a little bit of a left-hand turn. So I'm not going to be showing cool diagrams, and nobody's going to ask me to open source stuff. Just real quick, where are my security people at? Cool. All 4 of us will enjoy this presentation. So when I was asked to come and talk here, and this is my 2nd time, the last time I was here, I got the t-shirt with the Pac-Man with IPv6 on it. So based on this morning's conversation, it's really good to know that we've solved those problems and everything's IPv6 now. In my role at Zscaler, I talk to a lot of customers, all right? And over the next 85 boring vendor presentation slides, you guys will question, no, I'm kidding, got really quiet, which I thought maybe a giggle would be, okay, fine. But really what I see when I'm talking to customers is not problems of technology. We got enough smart people in this room that the technology part is never really the problem, right? Also, I need to thank you. This is the first time I've stood on stage in a long time and not had to be the guy to talk about NIST 2. Best of luck. I will sit and take notes. But really, the problems that I see are a lot about mindset and a lot about procedures and the way we do things. And I've gone through a few different iterations of this presentation and what I wanted to call it. But basically, I freaking hate IP addresses, and we should stop using them in what I do. They're very valuable for you. Great. Now, work with me here. So one of my fundamental beliefs is that the internet was created by hippies, right? Think about the protocols, right? They were invented in the 1960s. Go look up the pictures. There's a lot of people smoking pipes and a lot of big mustaches, right? And those mindsets that they had, think about all the protocols that we still use today. Like free love, man, share the data. And then the military said, and make sure it's available all the time. And that has been kicking our collective asses for like the past 40 years. Anybody strongly disagree? All right, cool, good. We all have the same form of PTSD. So what we did was we said, well, here's the people I trust and the people I don't. How many of you still have this in customers or out there today, right? My trusted network. No, there is no such thing as a trusted network, particularly after COVID. You know, most of the CISOs that I talk to say, hey, I went from 3 offices with 10,000 people to 30,000 one-person offices, right? And they have to deal with all of the things that are happening there. And this is basically RFC 1918, right? If you're RFC 1918, you're trusted. Otherwise, go away. And we all know that's not true anymore. One of the problems that I have with that is that we assume IP address to be a location, right? Where am I right now? I'm on stage, maybe having a little bit of the pre-presentation jitters. But the other day I asked, you know, oh, first I got to know who I am, right? Know thyself. And I said, well, where am I? Okay, well, I've got 2 IP addresses. I've got my local IP address. And then I have this kind of zero trust from my work IP address to connect me to my internal applications. I asked the question in a different way, and I get my Bonhoeffer IP address. That's my external IP address. Then I had an existential crisis, but we're not going to talk about that at the moment, okay? But then I asked my web browser, well, where am I? Oh, I'm in Poland. Cool. And then I started thinking about, well, as a security person, right, it doesn't take very much to then change where I am. And an IP address is not my location, right? Thank you for appreciating my tiny jokes in there. And then even more, right? I got kids. I also, anybody who knows me knows that I have a love of Minecraft. And so I spend a lot of time on YouTube, and I was thinking about it. And all it takes is 2 brain cells, and I can change my location anywhere. If this guy can do it, right? NordVPN. Anybody can. And from a security perspective, right, we mix up the difference between location and identity, because that's really what we're talking about, okay? In this room, most of you have, who has more than 2 devices on them right now? Nerds, right? So in a given day, right, just me with my only 3 devices, I go through, what, 50 to 80 different IP addresses in a day as I move through, as I change network to network and move around. Now, I'm thinking about this from the perspective of the defender. How do I figure out how screwed I am, right? And while that change of IP address is great for most, from a user perspective, from a defense perspective, becomes really problematic if we have this mindset that this is my trusted network and this IP address is relevant. And what I hope to say, and kind of my goal when I thought about this presentation, was how do I piss off a bunch of network people and, you know, taking something fundamental, IP addresses, and say it's crap. Anybody mad? No? All right, I'll get more offensive as the presentation goes on, don't worry. I realize I sound like this guy right now. And we're not worried about this guy from a defense perspective, right? But everybody knows that the internet is a bad neighborhood, right? It's full of all the bad stuff that we've been talking about. It's got people like you guys on it, right? It's a bad neighborhood. Anybody can roam around and open any door, or I guess in this case, maybe throw a brick through a window or crowbar a door open. And really what we as defenders need to think about is, well, who should I let into my house, or who should I let into my network, and what should they see when they get there? And for me, I apologize, I'm gonna throw some buzzwords in here. Promise not to throw tomatoes or anything at me. But for me, this is what zero trust really is. It's the industry's attempt to say, hey, all that hippie stuff that we've been dealing with, right? Why don't we fundamentally try to fix those? And I realize that it's been taken over by marketing monkeys. And half of you, when I said zero trust, did this, right? Because it's so, I saw a USB cable the other day being sold as a zero trust USB cable. We used to call that USB condoms, but I guess it's 2024 and you're not allowed to call them that anymore. I don't know. But for me, this is such an important factor and a part of NIST 2, matter of fact, Article 89. But for our conversation here today, the key principles that I want to point out is that we need to assume breach. You're already screwed, right? It's just how it goes. You want to ensure least privilege, and you want to verify all those connections explicitly. And you can't do that with an IP address, can you? So really, when somebody comes into my network, if I'm just going to pick on you, the handsome guy here with his laptop, and say he comes into my network, oh, sorry, the most handsome guy here with his laptop, is I don't want you to see everything on my street when you come into my network. Your view, you should only have access to this application, and this should be your view, right? You don't even need to know that all the rest of that stuff exists because you do not have access to that. Which is great. Anybody disagree with this? We want to go back to the hippie stuff? No? Usually I get one person who at least wants to fight with me a little bit. All right. So what does this mean from kind of a defense perspective? Well, you got bad guys out there, and we all know how the playbook works, right? They run recon, they figure out how to get in. Once they get in, they pop something, move laterally, get some credentials, move around, and then do whatever their objective on their actions on the objective might be. That's cool. I think we all kind of get that, right? What happens then when any of these systems pops an alert and goes to this guy, right? I picked the guy with the beanie because he seemed like the most coolest one I had in my PowerPoint library here, right? What does he do? What's the IP address, right? That's where he starts his investigation every single time. And for those of you who don't know, this IP address is the source of most of the problems I have. Those of you who look it up will now giggle. Those of you who don't will not. And this is also the start of, I got tired of trying to find pictures, so I just used AI. So the rest of these pictures are all the dumbest AI ones that I could get made. So I can mention AI in my presentation and check your vendor checklist off, right? But we start with this. Who cares about that IP address? There are more important factors at play here that will allow me to understand what my blast radius is, what my exposure is, and more importantly, how can I stop that? And the key here, for me, is identity, right? Again, stupidest one. Suspect number 2 here cracks me up every single time I look at this picture. I have questions. Why Microsoft would give me this image, I don't know. But identity is a foundation of zero trust network access if you're doing it right. You need to know not only who that person is, but identity in this context is not just a person. It could also be a workload. It could be a machine. It could be identifying a 5G connected device, whatever that is, right? And when we start with this, location or IP address then becomes secondary and contextual in our investigations to figure out what happens. So I've taken a turn to kind of split this up and break it out into 2 different user populations, right, when I'm thinking of attackers. So first we start with the external attackers. Usually somebody's annoying you on your firewall, something like that, right? We can, I put in the one ASN that I know because they cause problem, that's Hurricane, in case anybody else wants to deal with that. But usually IP addresses are a red herring. IP addresses are irrelevant because how many of you have seen a block list of like, here's all the APT 64 known IP addresses? Of course not, right? Because they have Mr. Beast. Mr. Beast helps them out. And usually we just sort of take these, right? It's background noise, that radiation of the internet, we block and move on with our lives. But where I'm really concerned is with nation state actors, right? The conversations that we've had here throughout the day, we're not concerned about kind of the script kiddies and all that kind of stuff. We're concerned about organized crime. We're concerned about nation state level actors. And I think also for you guys, every couple of years when they go, oops, we accidentally did a BGP misconfiguration. Sorry, we snarfed all this data for a couple of hours. It was totally an accident, right? That's the kind of stuff that I think we're all collectively worried about. But when you're talking about nation states, right? And I'm not going to pick any countries that we might be concerned, given that we're in NATO now. Yay! I just found some random flags for random APT groups. These are, I'm trying to figure out who the spies are. All right. These are the people that worry me. But what do these guys do? Do they attack you from the outside? No, they're the guys from the previous slide. The first objective they have is to grab an identity of one of your users so they can go and do whatever the bad stuff is that they want to do. So then they become an internal attacker. I love this diagram because I just said, make me a complicated network diagram. And this is what Microsoft spit out. And having worked in network security for a while, this is actually pretty clean compared to, I know some of you have more complicated diagrams than this, but it did have 5G in it, and that's a buzzword, so I threw it in because I'm a vendor and that's what we do. All right, but internal attackers, right? First, I want to define what's inside. How many of you have an inside network and an outside network? Liars. You have VPN? You have stuff in the cloud? Right? Where's Hoge? He's not here. When he comes in, everybody just point and laugh. That would make me really happy. We're friends, it's fine. So, you know, you're using AWS, you're using Azure, you've got users who are connecting from airports to wherever they are. There is no such thing as inside the network anymore. There's only bad people and good people, right? And your users, your workloads, third parties, cloud connected, whatevers, that is the perimeter. That is inside your network. The benefit of the inside of the network is that we as defenders have more visibility. We have better tooling, we have better controls, and we can do things like zero trust within our environment that you can't really do from just that stuff coming from the internet. And the good thing is that when we're trying to identify those nation-state actors, right, they want to act as one of your users because the IP address is relevant. They have a playbook, and that's how we do that attribution. Not, hey, I got this attack and it said North Korea on it. We got this attack and they did this, and they use this tool. That's how we do that identification. And with all the tooling we have inside, being able to use identity, access, the access context, and the device context, right, provides more, just in general, provides more context, provides better understanding of what the attack actually is, how concerned it is, how much panic, and whether or not I can close this on a Friday night and come back on Monday and deal with it, or if I got to call my wife and say, I'll be home late. And with zero trust and zero trust network access, it provides a way to limit that attack surface and control that blast radius. So you're a trusted user at my company. Welcome. First day orientation was quick, right? And you connect, you access the applications that I think you should be able to access that are relevant to your job. Cool. Then all of a sudden, I see you're logging in from a remote IP. You know, let's send you somewhere nice, Hawaii, totally cool, right? Then all of a sudden, I see you logging in from a third location. Okay, well, you know, that's my users traveled. There is no inside. Then I notice that that IP address is in North Korea. Well, now we have a problem. Now I need to look at your user account, right? The IP address is a secondary factor here. What I really care about to understand my exposure, my blast radius, is what access do you have? Where have you been? What have you done? Because that will allow me in that window to close up as much of the security analysis as possible and react faster and have a better understanding of exactly how screwed we are and what my data loss is. It's secondary. IP addresses are completely irrelevant for most of what we're talking about, right? A lot of times when we see these things, you know, it's stupid user tricks, right? The user doesn't know they're not supposed to do that. Fine. Sometimes I see, I talk to a lot of customers that are dealing with internal adversaries, people who are employees, and that has a different flow in terms of how we handle that. But the fundamental problem is that whenever I sit down and I talk to somebody who is in the SOC or an incident responder, and I'm like, hey, how's it going? I'm from Zscaler, here to hear about all your problems and what's going on. They go, we hate you. You guys are already halfway there. Don't worry, the presentation's done. You guys will hate me by the end of this. I'm like, what's going on? Everybody loves it. We're doing zero trust, yada, yada. They say, you've completely blinded us, right? We can't do our job anymore because of you, Tucker. Okay, go on. Let's unpack this. And then they're like, well, you know, we've got these 15 years of workflows that we've built up. And I said, well, show me. How do you guys do stuff? Well, you know, we use some IPSs. Oh, cool, IP addresses. What other tools do you use? I don't know, some firewall rules. How are those based? IP addresses. Okay, forwarding rule, yeah, IP addresses. Other stuff, IP addresses all the way down, right? I'm like, well, have you tried just modifying and basing your workflow on who the user is? Well, why would we do that? We don't like users. Users are a pain in our ass and they ruin our days, right? Yes, but how about we change our point of view on this? Because the user is really the perimeter here. The trust of that user's device and the context of that user matter, particularly in organizations who are new to zero trust or struggling with zero trust. This becomes dreadfully important. And that's really what I wanted to stand up and force you guys to listen to me complain about for the past few minutes, is that organizational change is very, very difficult. And I think a lot of times I sit down with somebody and say, yeah, we're doing zero trust. Why? I read it in an in-flight magazine and it seemed pretty cool, right? No, it's because of the business outcomes and all those things. But they forget at the beginning of that journey that this impacts the networking people, the security people, the analysts, the support people, all of those. So then they say, yeah, but we can't scan and we can't ping. Good, you shouldn't be able to, and I don't think you should, right? If you can't scan stuff, you're inherently more secure. Totally fine. There's other ways around that. We can't see what's happening. I talked about this already. Just checking myself for time here. Oh, I got plenty of time. Cool. I'll talk very slowly then. And starting with the identity, device, and access context, right? How many of you think there's a fundamental security difference between me accessing from my corporate issued laptop versus my iPad at home? This is the interactive portion. I got time. I can wait. Of course there is, right? Because I've got a whole load of mandatory endpoint stuff and all of the MDMs and all that stuff. Sometimes we want to allow our users to access things with random devices. That's totally fine. But the context matters in terms of how much they have access to. If we don't build that into the security workflows, then we're blinding our SOC people, right? They're going to be, I mean, SOC people are always inherently grumpy, but they're going to be like even more grumpy than usual. And a recent example, I don't know if you guys have like the internet, but like there's been a lot of VPN things happening lately. Anybody unfamiliar with VPN problems? No, nobody's had panic? Okay, you guys are all lying. You're just tired of my shit already and don't want to raise your hands. I hear you. All right, so the customers will call me or I'll talk to a customer. God forbid a sales guy reaches out and says, you should talk to James, because then everybody gets mad. But my issue is never, hey, have you patched your VPN vendor X? All right, and first, I hate VPN. I think VPN is a horrible thing for us to do in terms of security. There are use cases, but I think that the fundamental idea of I want to connect this network to that remote network in a security perspective is not something I trust any user with ever, right? More importantly, it's what was your exposure? Who were the users that logged in during that period of exposure? And now we have a hit list to go work with going forward in terms of understanding my blast radius, understanding my exposure, and then being able to report up to the board to say, yeah, we're cool. Like we're sufficiently secure in terms of all of this random VPN stuff. So the final thoughts, and then I've got a few minutes for questions. You guys all look very beer thirsty, so I'm guessing that the questions will either be really hard or non-existent. There's no such thing as a trusted network. Anytime somebody says you're on the trusted network, I say, you don't know me very well, because I will break this trusted network pretty fast. Second point is that zero trust, if you can get to, most of the customers I talk to are so sick of zero trust that they call it something else, network modernization, or some other code name, because everybody says, when they see that. But all it is a recognition of the fact that there is no trusted network, and the network was created by hippies, and we don't trust the hippies either, right? Starting with identity will result in more meaningful security outcomes, right? Knowing that 192.168.whatever has done a bad thing is marginally useful. But if I can say that this guy right here has done something, his user account might be compromised, now I know what I can do as a defender to really clean that up and make a meaningful thing happen. And at the end of the day, you know, when people ask what I do, I talk a lot about the fact that the things you guys do, making packets move from one point to another in the most optimized way, is fantastic. I've got customers who are using 5G. I've got customers who are using Starlink, MPLS, SD-WAN, all the letters, right? And the benefit that I think this line of thinking will give you is to separate your security from that plumbing. The flexibility you have when you don't say, oh, well, you know, we can't do that because all of our policies are sitting on this firewall. And if we do that, then the fall-on effects, that hinders the ability for you to deliver the best, coolest, most, you know, Raspberry Pi-enabled solutions out there, right? Probably something IPv6 fits in here as well. But having security as a layer on top and separating those two delivers benefits to both my side of the stopping packets people and your side of the making packets go people. And with that, I got 5 minutes right on the nose for anybody who might have questions.
Got a question right there, third row.
Just shout, I can hear you.
No, not good for the recording.
Oh, I forget this is being recorded.
Hey,
Hi,
it's Lev from Google. So the modern systems are very complex and security is complex as well. Don't you think that like network segmentation is still an important part of the security perimeter? While of course application layer security is crucial, we don't want to just drop network segmentation away.
So network segmentation to a point, right? Most of the customers that I talk to have, some of them might be in this room, always go, yeah, that zero trust thing, it's great, right? But what about the AX400 we have in the basement? We can't touch that. We only have Bernie who knows how to do that, and he's retired, right? Of course, segmentation makes sense in that case. But if you and I were to go start a company tomorrow, right? We're just 10 people, an AWS account, and some MacBooks with cool stickers. We wouldn't build a network that way, I don't think, right? We wouldn't build a network with that hardcore segmentation. I get involved in a lot of incident response, and they call, you know, the typical players, and they always want to back up the truck with a bunch of hardware, 47 kilometers of network cable, and go, this is your solution. But that's unsustainable. I think there is a point to segmentation for specific use cases, but logical segmentation and access control, right? You don't want your servers and your users on the same network. Separate those, of course. You don't want those IoT systems and anything else on the same network. But the concept of like super micro nano segmentation of everybody has their own, you know, specific subnet or whatever, I think that is untenable long term. It works short term. Good question. Did that answer your question? All right, beers, disagreement, I hear.
We had one more question, I think.
Yes, one from the internet.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, and they just want to know if there's a specific typology of the organizations that actually listen to you and try to and commit to killing this zero trust misnomer.
One more time? All I heard is, do people want to kill me? Yes, many.
No, is there a specific type of organizations that listen to you and then commit to killing this the zero trust misnomer that you mentioned? What types of organizations are that? So
the majority of organizations that I work with are ones that are multinational. We're talking 50,000 employees and above, typically. Now it really depends on a lot of this, we talked about it before about politics. A lot of this depends on the internal politics of the organization, right? If you've got a privately held organization and then there's the guy Jokke, who's been there for 27 years, who has run those firewalls to put, beans of bread on his table, he is inherently distrustful of that. And because of the political structure within that, right, run by the boss and the boss's son, that becomes very difficult, and they usually just say, well, no, we're not going to call it zero trust, or we'll just do what I say because it's my company. When it comes to larger ones, I know it's not my customer, but talking to people like SEB and some of the bigger banks here in Sweden, and they'll be on stage tomorrow, they specifically do a lot of this kind of rebranding. So I think in large, complex organizations, it makes more sense because nobody cares about zero trust, but they care about, the first question they ask is, what does this mean to me, right? And changing that naming will make it more meaningful to all of the different parts of the organization.
We can take a super quick question and quick answer just over there.
Quick answer, have you met me?
Hans from LAM Consulting, great presentation.
Thank you.
You and I have something in common. We both have badges that stage Netnod and our names. And the same people that designed the Woodstock Festival also designed internet. And without registration, you end up in chaos. Could we expect a new internet secure with registration of all the device before you get access? Because then we have identity.
I think for public internet, if you saw the Tor presentation, there are situations where that becomes very dangerous, right? The benefit of the internet is the ability to free and open communication across there. When it comes to the corporate environment, that requires a different level. I think the internet would suck without trolls, right? They entertain me. I'm not one. But we should talk about this after, because I hate the concept, and I think most people in this room would, if welcome to the internet, please verify with bank ID before you continue. That would be, it would have chilling effects.
Okay, thank you, James. As always, provocative and entertaining. So please join me in thanking James for a wonderful presentation.